This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation.
The work that you do in the off season and all the preparation and to watch your process take place over a period of time is what excites me.
As the Tigers travel to the Palmetto State for the first time since 2008 to face the South Carolina Gamecocks in the SEC opener.
Looking for Lacey, spinning. Lacey has it. Left corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Fighting Tigers.
Coming up, Coach Kelly discusses this week's preparation and practice. But first, from the Capital One Studios, inside legendary Tiger Stadium, here are your hosts, former Tiger Gordy Rush, and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
That's right. Good Monday. Well, still morning, but headed towards the afternoon. We'll get ready for the Brian Kelly Press Conference as coming to you from the Capital One Studios. The Tigers victorious over the weekend. Home opener against Nicholls. They get the win 44-21. They move to 1-1 on the season. And just like that, as the Big Voice guy says, Gordy, we're headed into SEC play. We go on the road to, I guess right now, a trending South Carolina team. And I say that, and we'll talk about the Gamecocks coming up in just a little bit. But I think they are, suffice to say, a little ahead of what they thought they would be, at least talking to most Gamecock fans. So we'll break down the Gamecocks coming up. Of course, Brian Kelly will do that coming up at 12 noon when he takes the podium at the Lawton Room. But let's look back with a diagnosis after the fact in the 44-21 win. Gordy, I think I'll try to sum it up in the sense, big picture, that maybe the first half not as crisp, not as efficient as LSU would like to be. Defensively, had to make some changes in the second half. Able to get the separation, maybe longer than most Tiger fans wanted, and I could sense from Brian Kelly it took a little longer. But at the end of the day, they were able to get the win 44-21. Some good and some things that, again, you're going to try to improve going into the SEC opener.
Offensively, I thought LSU looked good. They threw the football, and they picked up where they left off, and some stuff they did in the first half against USC. Defensively, this is a Blake Baker defense that has been really aggressive, that has shot gaps and run after the football, that you can't do that against Nicholls State. And Nicholls State brought the fight to them. They ran physical. They were physical up front. And it took a half for Blake Baker, I think, to get in the locker room and slow things down and got this defense to play gap responsible, right? In other words, you don't want to go up the field and 4 yards up the field and create a 5-yard gap. Play your gap and maybe take a step in there, but kind of build the fence. And they did a much better job after Guggenheim had that 67-yard run. I'm not sure he recovered from that 67-yard run. Fullbacks like that aren't used to running 67 yards. He had an outstanding evening for Nicholls State, but defensively they did a better job after that.
Yeah, I have to believe that Coach Rebo, if you could hear him talk today or even after the game, probably said, that first half was probably went as well as we could possibly hope it to go, meaning that, again, LSU's aggressiveness, we were able to play against that with quick runs. I mean, again, what they do very good, spread to run the football, but there were a lot of lanes that were open because of those aggressive stances that LSU took. And then when they got in third and short in that first half, again, we didn't see a lot of McQuaid throwing the football, but they went right to the slant, needed 3 or 4 yards. They got 5, 6, or 7. And it kind of, I got to believe Coach Rebo's over there going, man, as long as we can keep this up, we got a shot to hang tight.
Well, absolutely. I mentioned on the broadcast, McQuaid coming in via the JUCO route has really made a difference for Nicholls State. He took them from being kind of in the middle of the pack of the Southland Conference, and you add McQuaid, who understands the RPO game and what they're trying to get done with that power running team. They were able to achieve a little bit more balance. Won the Southland last year and are the favorite to win again this year. And he really had a good first half. And it took LSU doing a better job, stopping run on first and second down, put McQuaid behind the chains, and LSU was able to get a little bit more aggressive.
As you mentioned, offensively, another great night for Garrett Nussmeier, again, utilizing a number of receivers. You can't bury the headline here. I mean, obviously, you go into last week without John Emery Jr., out for the season, and then we get bad news after Guillory goes down. Jacobian Guillory, kind of the anchor of that defensive front, goes down early in the first quarter. We find out yesterday that his season is done due to an Achilles injury. And then I thought, not only did they make the adjustments, but they also had to start backfilling and find the right rotation up front defensively because, again, that's how important Guillory is. And unfortunately, that's how important he would be the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a group that every offensive coordinator is now going to circle. They're going to see, number one, the success that Nicholls had running the football between the tackles. You just lost your best defensive lineman and really your only returning lineman with a lot of SEC play. And so you've got transfers and some young freshmen up there. Bo Davis has his work cut out for him. He is a fantastic coach. I like really what he's done with some of these defensive linemen, but be interesting to see if there's any movement of position. They slide anybody inside or they move anybody from the other side of the football. How do they address this? They do have some numbers, but this is the SEC. You're going to need numbers on the defensive line.
Well, I don't want to not give Garrett Nussmeier credit. I mean, he went 27 of 37, good completion percentage, 302 yards, and joined a very exclusive club at LSU, and that's a 6-touchdown game.
Absolutely.
So you've got Joe Burrow, you got Jaden Daniels, and now you have Garrett Nussmeier. The other standout to me was, again, we focused last week leading up to the Nicholls game about running the football, something that Coach Kelly has talked about really for 3 years, but certainly a lot of talk about wanting to be able to run the football effectively this coming season. I don't know that we were wowed once again, and it'll be interesting to hear Coach Kelly discuss the running game. I'm sure he's going to be asked about it. Your thoughts? You're down there on the field.
Certainly not. LSU's not running the football. I think the way a lot of folks thought they would with 4 starters returning on the offensive line with the bookend tackles. I will also say that both USC and Nicholls, and I think a lot of teams are going to look at this Tiger offense and say, well, we're not going to let them just lean on them. We're going to get after Garrett Nussmeier a little bit. The book on Garrett is he has in his past rushed some throws, made a couple errors. You put some pressure on him, he may do that. And we
like
saw
any quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And saw Nicholls lined up and played fearless. They played a ton of man-free, bump and run, so corners at the line of scrimmage, 1 safety deep, and they brought a lot of pressure. Now, of course, Nicholls was coming here. We're a 45-point underdog. We're going to roll dice and play it that way. South Carolina did some similar things with Kentucky when Kentucky was struggling to throw the football. So my point is they haven't had a whole lot of numbers to run against. So teams have loaded the box, and it's opened up the passing. That being said, you've got to show the ability to gash these defenses at some point for them to respect you in that run game.
Again, hopefully this week we'll hear from Coach Kelly coming up at noon, Gordy, and maybe a couple of guys got the night off on Saturday who haven't played this season.
Right.
A couple of guys who we saw in Vegas also didn't see a lot of action. Hopefully they're going to be recovered and closer to 100% going into the SEC opener because there were a number of weapons certainly on both sides of the ball. It was great to see Zy Alexander get back into the game because arguably he was the best corner LSU had a year ago until his injury against Army. So that was good to see. But offensively, as well as Garrett and the receivers perform, you're still missing some of your big assets.
No doubt. Obviously, Grant Dellinger, we're expecting him back. The 2 wide receivers to me are huge, Kyle Parker and Chris Hilton. And their ability to stretch defenses vertically. I think that's missing a little bit in the Tiger pass game. Like to see them get back in there. Pimpton was dressed. We saw a lot of Trudez Green. We didn't see Pimpton. I don't know if we'll find out whether that was a coach's decision or not. Womack was dressed but didn't play. From my understanding, he was nursing a little bit of a muscle tweak. And so there are a lot of people that they were able to hold out. For me, I think the biggest plus, and you mentioned it, Zy Alexander was the highest Tiger graded on PFF in that ranking. I thought he was outstanding. And you got Stamps that's playing good football. If you can solidify both corners and move Sage Ryan to a nickel and move some of these young guys, P.J. Woodland, into a nickel position, I think that really helps this defensive secondary.
I'm glad you mentioned P.J. Woodland because he, to me, really stood out on the field as well. I mean, he's raw. He's going to learn. He's going to develop. But he certainly has the skill set. I think he's going to have a great career here. And not next year, but as we get deeper into this season.
He played – look – it was a tough introduction game in Las Vegas for him. They put him out there on an island. They threw the 2 verticals against him. If you're able to bring him in at the nickel position, right, where he's not out there on an island, he gets a little bit of help, you see how aggressive he can be. And he actually had that forced fumble on the slant route, the one turnover that I think opened up the football game a little bit. A lot of ability. He is fearless. I think he's going to continue to get more snaps.
Well, we'll find out more. Coach Brian Kelly will join us at 12 noon from the Lawton Room. He'll discuss his thoughts on Saturday's win, 44-21, as the Tigers now get to 500 early on the season, 1-1. And then I'm sure very quickly going to turn the page and talk about the matchup coming up with the Gamecocks. First time since 2008, the Tigers have traveled to Columbia. And it's going to be an early kick, 11 a.m. The good news is LSU responded pretty well to the early kicks a year ago, so certainly they know how to prepare for that at home and certainly on the road. We'll continue with more. We come back, we'll kind of preview the Gamecocks. They're off to a 2-0 start before we hand it off to Coach at 12 noon. It's the Brian Kelly Press Conference, and it continues after this.
There was a time when a person's word was enough, a time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
Join the celebration of Great American RV Superstores as we mark our 40th anniversary. Enjoy over 40% off MSRP and upgrade to an RV that fits your lifestyle. Hurry to your nearest Great American RV Superstores or visit greatamericanrv.com. It's time to make the most of our 40 years, and when we celebrate, you save big. Great deals, greater adventures at Great American RV Superstore. Making memories one weekend at a time. 2023 Jayco G Flight 224BA. Stock number 51600 in Heflin. MSRP $40,079. Car savings $21,088. Sale price $18,991 plus tax, title, and license.
Tiger fans, this is Eddie Kennison, former LSU football wide receiver. If you know me, you know I'm all about making big plays.
Tigers win! Tigers win!
That's why I joined the team at LSU Sports Properties. Our goal here is to help businesses make big plays both on and off the field. If you want to give your brand that competitive edge and be a part of the biggest stage in college sports, give the corporate sponsorship team at LSU Athletics a call. Your brand, our fans. Utilize the power of LSU Athletics to promote your business and sponsor LSU Athletics today. Call 225-578-2788. Go Tigers.
And here's Heather with the weather.
Well, it's beautiful out there, sunny and 75, almost a little chilly in the shade. Now, let's get a read on the inside of your car. It is hot. You've only been parked a short time and it's already 99 degrees in there. Let's not leave children in the back seat while running errands. It only takes a few minutes for their body temperatures to rise, and that could be fatal.
Cars get hot fast and can be deadly. Never leave a child in a car. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Just moments away from the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Once again, here are Gordy Rush and Chris Blair.
Coming up at 11 a.m. this Saturday, it'll be an early start to start SEC play. LSU on the road taking on the Gamecocks of South Carolina, and what you can expect to be a rowdy Williams-Brice Stadium when Sandstorm gets cranked up there on Saturday morning. Of course, College game day maybe surprised a few people. I got a text in the middle of the game Saturday night, Gordy, and I mentioned it on the air, and I qualified it by saying, hey, I can't substantiate this, but this is what I heard. And then later we found out, indeed, it was confirmed. College game day will be there at the fairgrounds right across from Williams-Brice Stadium. So put all that together, and the fact that they come off a huge win to the Gamecocks on the road in Lexington, a place that they haven't done very well traditionally. And it's interesting when you look at Coach Shane Beamer, Gordy, just the psychology of this team. You know, 2 years ago, he had the big win over Tennessee and then got the win over Clemson to end the season, and people were like, hey, we're trending in the right direction. Last year, they go 5-7. They got a huge win at home over Kentucky late, but then dropped to not a blowout, but they did drop to Clemson. So they didn't go to a bowl. There was just kind of, I have a lot of friends spent 12, 15 years in the Palmetto State, and a lot of those Gamecock people were like, hey, we don't know. We'll toss a coin, see what happens this year. That's different after Saturday. I got a flood of texts from my Gamecock buddies talking about how great a game it's going to be on Saturday. But I say all that because they are riding high going to a 2-0 start. But when you really break down this team, I mean, it really is team wins. I mean, they were on the ropes against Old Dominion, had to come back late to win over the Monarchs. But credit them going to Kentucky. I mean, they really whipped Kentucky. The question I have is, how good is South Carolina?
Yep.
No offense. How good is Kentucky? Because offensively, the Wildcats, they really set the game of football just watching the film back decades.
First half was a bad half of football, right? Vandergrift, the quarterback for Kentucky, was 3 of 10 for 30 yards. I mean, neither team was over 300 yards in total offense. Kentucky was under 200 yards of total offense. South Carolina's going to have athletes, right? And so defensively, they did a nice job in the portal, but got a lot of new people in there. The question was going to be, what's going to happen with this offense? Spencer Rattler was there for 2 years. Obviously had a disappointing senior campaign, but we know how good Spencer is. And they were leaning on Lenora Sellers, who's a redshirt freshman, young quarterback, more of a run-first guy. So he's a little bit of a developmental thrower, and they were going to pair him up with Rocket Sanders, the running back that had a nice career at Arkansas, highly touted, was injured, I think, when we played him 2 years ago. So they were trying to piecemeal this offense together. They have certainly not hit their stride, but they got hot in the second half, and they were able to put Kentucky away.
You know, it's interesting because I think we'll have to go back and watch that from our standpoint, the Kentucky-South Carolina game, because when you look at the stat line, the offense for South Carolina does not wow you. Now, they did get a pick six at the end of the game to get them to the final score, but it's not as if they're a juggernaut offensively, but they found a way to do it. And, again, defensively, they looked pretty good against Kentucky. And we'll find out on Saturday morning. Gordy, we'll see you in the Palmetto State then. We'll go to the Lawton Room now. Brian Kelly ready to go early. Here he is.
That's right. I don't think this is a site, though. I don't. This is not one of the sanctioned sites. I know that for sure. You guys will probably want to hang out in the new Wellness Center. All right, we'll start with just a recap of the Nicholls State game. And look, you know, we have you know, a way to kind of go through the week, and I know you guys have picked up a little bit on it, but you know, Sunday is called Assessment Sunday for us. It gives us an opportunity to assess our play after our performance, which, you know, was a successful Saturday for us. And so many times, you know, when we get together, you know, it's a, you know, a quick reaction to a question, and what I saw on the field, what you saw on the field is prompting your questions, and we have a healthy discourse, you know, accordingly. Been doing it for 34, 35 years. And that's the nature of the media and the head coach after in a press conference. But the great part of this is that we get an opportunity to spend 7 hours dissecting film and going over the game plan and watching. And as I got a chance to do that with our staff and meeting with the staff, there were a lot more good things that happened in that game than I was able to articulate after the game. We had a number of first-time players step up and play really good football for us. And excited about Gabe Relaford's play, for example. Jawan Johnson stepping in as a true freshman and playing, you know, after being told on Tuesday that he was moving into an offensive position. Sean Washington, who, you know, had to step in for an injured Jacobian Guillory, playing literally his first snaps for us after spending the first 3 weeks on scout team. And that was great to see. Alexander coming back from knee surgery, an ACL, and playing the kind of aggressive, you know, man-to-man coverage that we were looking for, and almost picking up from where he left off, you know, before he got that injury against Army. Really great to see that. Have the return game with Zion that had been missing. So there were so many really good things. And I think the most important thing was this sense that we were out-physicaled, and that simply wasn't the case. From an offensive standpoint, we threw the football because that's what was required in this game. They were in a 7 and an 8-man front, and we needed to throw the football. We were not going to run into extra hats, and an extra hat being an extra defender, just to flex and say we're the bigger guys. We're going to do tactically and technically what is the most appropriate thing. That's why Garrett Nussmeier leads the country in touchdown passes right now, and he's throwing at 75%. So I just wanted to give you a sense of assessing what transpired in that game. Now, that's from an offensive perspective. There's no sense here of our offensive line is not physical enough or can't knock people off the ball. When we needed to, we did that. And so I feel really good about that. Defensively, there were 2 drives that were difficult for us to get off the field. They hit some really good plays against us. We're on 3rd down. They kept the drives alive, hit some snag routes, some slant routes. We get some young guys out there that are learning on the fly. Excuse me. But we were aggressive up front. We fitted the plays pretty darn good. I told our guys, this team, Nicholls, was a lot like many of the games that I played at Notre Dame when we're playing Navy. It's a difficult offense to defend. It's ball control. You better know your gap responsibility. And if you don't leverage them the right way, you're going to give up a big play. And they were able to milk it the first couple of drives. And then after the big play run, I thought our defense did a great job. So I just wanted to give you that sense. Nicholls did a great job. Hats off to them. They played a great game. They were sound. They had a great game plan. But at the end of the day, after the touchdown run, we held Nicholls to 86 yards on their final 5 possessions. So that coupled with, what we did on the offensive side of the ball, I feel a whole lot better than I did Saturday after I went home for dinner on Sunday night. So having said that, we move on to SEC play and a very good South Carolina team. Noon kickoff, ABC. College game day, so it's obviously going to be a great environment there, a great opportunity for us to take another step in the development of our football team, and obviously, continue to work to get better. As we mentioned, Garrett leads the SEC in passing touchdowns and completions. Lacey leads the SEC in receiving touchdowns. Xavier Thomas leads in kickoff return yardage, and our offensive line's done a great job in keeping Garrett up and allowing him, obviously to throw the football. Playing South Carolina, you look at what Shane's done. He really gets his team to play well, and particularly at home. They come off a really great road win against Kentucky, 31-6. And a lot of it is, the type of offense they're running now with, Sellers at quarterback, Sanders, the transfer from Arkansas, Simon at tight end. This is a big physical quarterback. Reminds me of the kid at Florida, Richardson, the quarterback at Arkansas. Big physical, 6'3", 242. We're going to have to be prepared for kind of a similar offense in a sense. But a guy with a strong arm that can, certainly get the ball down the field. Campbell, Harbor's a freak of an athlete, so they've got some weapons there from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, they lead the SEC in sacks. So this is a defense with an outstanding front, freshman edge player, and Stewart and Kennard's an outstanding player. Really love Amanda Worry, the defensive back, number 7, very active. He was a freshman All-American 2022. Just a really good defense. And they run both 3 down and 4 down and made it really difficult for Kentucky last week. And then very innovative, do a lot of things in the special teams game. So on the road in the SEC, we know the challenges, especially with the noon start, and we look to improve on all facets of our game as we go on the road against the Gamecocks. So with that, open it up to questions.
Brian, can you confirm Jacobian Guillory's injury? Maybe speak about what that loss means for your team.
Yeah, obviously, we've lost him for the year. It looks he's going into surgery right now with an Achilles tendon rupture. Look, he was a stalwart for us. Big, physical, point of attack guy. We're having conversations now with he and his family about the possibilities of medical red shirt for him. We'll have more information on that as that kind of comes together. But now we have other guys that are going to have to step up in that situation. So, again, I think we'll have more information as it comes together. But, in terms of that rotation, we have some ideas in terms of what we might do in the next couple of days.
Brian, to the point of your opening salvo and maybe perspective, I guess how much of that is on the buildup that we all assumed was going to be the strength of this team, being the offensive line, and Will Campbell talking about going to run the ball right at people. How much of that is us making more of kind of like you said, attacking it differently but still being effective?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with the media. This is not a media-created scenario. This has to do with how teams have wanted to defend us. And that is they don't want us to run the football. So this is really about a team. And I told Joe Sloan, Joe, I do not want this to be about, we have to run it to show everybody that we're big and bad and we have an offensive line. If they protect like they have, and we haven't given up a sack in 2 games, and let Garrett Nussmeier throw the ball against cover 1, we have great receivers and we'll beat you that way. Look, I've built my career on wanting to be equally as good. Balance to me is being equally as good at running it as throwing it. Now, if South Carolina comes out in 3 down and plays cover 2, I guarantee you we're running the football. But when you're loaded in there and there's 8 guys on the line of scrimmage and you're just saying, I can't block them all, what sense does it make really in those situations? We'll pick our spots. There are going to be times that you're going to have to make a guy miss or run a guy over, which we did on several occasions in the blue zone. But by and large, this has nothing to do with you guys. This has everything to do with the way teams have wanted to play us, and it's been much more with a loaded front, and that's going to cause us to throw the football.
You mentioned Zai playing more than half the snaps, and I think you only had like 60-something snaps on defense, but where is he at going into a game like this in terms of what he can maybe handle? And then Sage moved back to safety and even played there when Jardin came back in the second half. Where are y'all at kind of with the outlook at DB?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think what we have found is that nobody is at a point where they can play 65, 70 snaps. We have to get our players playing at the highest level, but not playing that many snaps. I think Zai can play, 30, 35, but he's going to have to be spelled as well. So, I think you're going to see 4 corners playing. I think you're going to see 4 or 5 safeties playing. So I think we're going to really rely on the depth of those units to make certain that we're playing at the highest level instead of saying, hey, Major Burns, you got to play 65 snaps or 62 snaps. And I think we'll be a better defensive backfield playing in that capacity.
Brian over here. When you lose a guy like Jacobian, does the coaching staff have to, I don't know if scale back necessarily is the right phrase to use here, but do you temper your expectations of what you expect from that position on the interior defensive line, or how do you go about that?
Well, Jacobian, was a very technically sound, physically strong football player. So what you're losing from that standpoint. But we know what he wasn't as well. And he, he wasn't a dynamic pass rusher, and he would be the first to tell you. But you're losing a very strong inside presence, to your defense. And so you've got to look at, who can make up for that. And, we've got some ideas about how we can do things with our front that can, make up for his loss. But, it's like any time you lose a really good player, you don't necessarily make up for what he did. You try to do some other things differently that can complement the guys that you have.
Coach, right over here down to your left. Speaking on the linebacker position, Whit Weeks had a big game, but could you just kind of maybe expound upon the options you have there and maybe the push with 2 games worth of film to look at now of how to get Harold Perkins, maybe some more of the splash plays that we've seen and become accustomed to him seeing and doing?
Yeah, we go back and forth in terms of, Harold's production and, wanting to get him involved as much as we can. And, part of it is, setting him up for success. And so, that always becomes the conversation of getting guys in the right place at the right time. And part of it is, the players have to, obviously make the plays as well. So, we're continuing to look at, are we better suited in, nickel personnel? Are we better suited in, 3 linebacker sets? So I think in answering the question honestly is just, I think it's a continuous search of trying to get him in a position where, he can impact our defense the most. So, I think we'll continue to work on that this week and see where we end up on Saturday.
Hey, Coach, right here in the middle. Gabe Relaford had a great game, of course, against Nicholls. He was actually a defensive end, then you moved him to defensive tackle. Speak about his versatility, and also can you touch on other guys who've been cross-training at both the end and D-tackle?
Yeah, we didn't move him to defensive tackle. He was playing in our nickel package inside. It's just a pass rush position, but he's a defensive end. No, he just, obviously he's a guy that we really liked coming out and felt like he had some, ability to play early on, but he's worked at it. I mean, and has put himself in this position. Obviously, Coach Peoples done a great job with him early on in his pass rush techniques, but he's a natural end that, when we get into our nickel and dime packages, we can slide into a 4 technique, and he can be an inside pass rush guy for us.
Hey, Coach, what was so upsetting about the field goal at the end of the first half?
I wasn't upset about missing the field goal. I was upset about the process. I had just explained what the process was, and the referee went over and explained it to Damien and confused him, and essentially said, listen to the head coach. I've been doing this a long time. He got confused about the process. So we had a 1.46 operation time. Your operation time needs to be about 1.1. He thought something different was going to happen after the explanation. I had taken the time to explain it to him. He didn't listen to me. I like our guys to listen to me. Is that okay? Especially in those situations.
Hey, Coach.
He'll listen to me in the future.
Gotcha. We didn't see Kamori Pimpton out there much. Just can you maybe give an update on him? And then we also noticed that Bo Bordelon kind of switched numbers to 9. Just what do you guys like about that? And is that
well, he just gives us another big guy, at the tight end position. Pimpton had been nursing an ankle, was not 100%, didn't feel like we could get him in there. So, that's why you saw a lot more trade as. But Bordelon, coming in at that tight end position, he's an athletic guy that we felt like gives us a big push on the goal line. And then, of course, we put him in there and we throw the ball. So we want to break a couple of tendencies early on with him. But no, I think, he gives us a nice physical presence there as that third tight end.
Hey, Coach, just on a couple of the young guys they're relying on, the Lenora Sellers and Dylan Stewart. the quarterback and defensive end, two very key positions to be with first-year guys. Wondering is it tough to know exactly what to expect from them so early, or do you feel like you have a good handle on what they do well?
Oh, well, Sellers is a pure pass rusher. Sellers, the quarterback, he is a physical presence, and a lot like, I think I got the name right, Richardson, the quarterback that played at Florida, isn't it Richardson? Big, physical, strong. He's got a cannon for arm. The kid can throw it 65, 70 yards. He just reminds me of that kind of physical presence. But he's a new starter, but you're going to have to do some really good things to defend the quarterback and the quarterback run game because they've got the transfer from Auburn as well. So, that's going to be important for us. So that's going to give us, a great understanding after playing Nicholls of the quarterback run game. The defensive end, Stewart, is a pure pass rusher. It doesn't mean he can't defend the run. I'm not saying that. But he's a guy that they want in there to get after the quarterback. And we're going to have to do a really good job about it. We're going to have to be disciplined in our drops. We're going to have to get the ball out on time because those edge guys can certainly – this is an SEC defensive front, and they can get to the quarterback, and in particular he can.
Hey, Brian, over here. Latest on Garrett Dellinger, Chris Hilton, and Kyle Parker?
Dellinger is cleared. He'll be at practice tomorrow. He'll be ready to go. I think, if we were playing, last weekend against it was the championship game, we could have maybe done something about it, but I think it was best to hold him. Kyle Parker is improving. We're trying to get full strength back from that nerve that kind of got pinched. I think he's probably a guy that will find himself ready by the end of the week. And Chris is day-to-day. He is ground-based. He is running. This now becomes, what can you tolerate? There's going to be some pain associated with it, but he has all function now, and it's just a matter of time now with Chris. When he starts to feel really good, where he can get in and out of breaks and function at his level, we'll see him back on the field.
And then following up on Shay's question, do you plan to keep Sage Ryan at safety moving forward?
I think that's where he can help us the best. Look, he's a very versatile player for us, but I think that's where he fits right now for us. I think, we've really focused in now with Alexander playing at the level he has. I think it just makes sense for us to keep him at the safety position.
Coach over here. So Garrett Nussmeier, he spread the football 8 different receivers on Saturday night. And besides Kyron, got a lot of different guys involved. So as far as that second receiver, because of how deep that receiver position is it going to be for that second guy, you think, by committee, whether it's Anderson and Daniels and some of those other weapons?
Yeah, and I think there's going to be more to come. I think we just talked about Chris coming back. Kyle Parker's going to get in the mix here before it's all said and done. I really think that as we keep going, I know I talked about Sampson, but, we got to, there are the little things that he's got to continue to work on, but he's going to get some touches before this season is out. So I just think that there's more guys. As you know, Taylor's having a monster year for us right now, and I think that's going to continue. He's on the pace right now, Garrett, to throw between 45 and 50 touchdown passes. If we can continue that, if teams want to play us the way they are, he's a very talented quarterback, and we've got a lot of depth at the wide receiver position.
Hey, Coach. I know you guys have been doing a ton of rotating at defensive tackle anyway before the Giller injury, but you still need to obviously replace his snaps. So who's going to, see an increase in playing time potentially and sort of fill that role?
Well, as I mentioned, Sean Washington picked up most of those snaps on Saturday. Sean wasn't scheduled to play. When Guillory went out, Sean picked him up and played it very, very well. So he's going to be the first guy that picks up a piece of those. And then we're going to have to make a decision. Do we activate, McKinley Don McKinley? Do we get him moving a little bit more? Do we move somebody down inside that's a defensive end that can help us? And so there's some guys that maybe can move down inside to give us some more snaps. And we're probably talking about 15 to 20 more reps that are needed inside. So once Schoen is able to do the things that he did on Saturday, that helps us a lot now in trying to find another 15, 20 reps.
And offensively, you talked a lot about the boxes and not wanting to run into those heavy box counts. But does Garrett have the latitude to line of scrimmage to change the play based on what the box count?
Yeah, so we have 4 balls that we threw out on the perimeter that were runs. Those are actually run plays, right? So when that ball gets thrown out on the perimeter, you see Anderson catch the ball, on a quick perimeter throw. Those are run plays that he's throwing the ball out because there's too many guys. I can't block them all. So that happened 4 times. Those were run calls with too many players that you couldn't block. So the ball gets thrown out on the perimeter, and those are some of his checks. The other ones, some of those run plays, we have hitch routes attached to it. And the run is called, but because there's too many guys, we have free access throws that we can throw the ball onto the perimeter as well. So, I think we had 23 or 26 runs. I think we probably called in totality maybe 35, 36 run plays, but they were checked out of because of the particular looks.
The Juwan story, the quick week and how well he performed. Can you kind of take me through that process? How much more does he get now? And what does the next thing look like for him?
We're going to lay a lot, as much as we can. So I would say as much as we can, more so than a lot. And I think he's capable. Early indications are he picks things up fast. He's a quick study. The game comes easy to him. And, I'm a big believer, give him as much as he can handle. And he's not a guy that will shy away from any of it. So I'm excited. I want to just continue to give him more and more and, see where it goes. That's where we're at right now.
Brian, are y'all going to make any contingencies for the hurricane later in the week?
Yeah, so we've already had there's one thing that I've learned about being here at LSU. There are plans over plans over plans when it comes to when people talk about hurricanes. So the thing that we're clear on is we have a plan in place for Wednesday, Thursday, because that's when obviously it's imminent. And then the next stage is thunderstorms on Saturday, and then disruption of the game. So I've already met with our strength staff for stretching purposes, our nutrition. So it's been a long morning on hurricanes and thunderstorms on Saturday. So yes, we're already on top of that. Thank you.
The weather might hurt that atmosphere, but I don't think LSU's been there in 16 years. They've got ESPN College Game Day.
Oh, I didn't know that. 16 years is the last time?
I think 2008.
Wow.
So the intensity of the atmosphere that you're facing your first true road game and whatnot, what does your team have to rise up to meet from that perspective?
I just think, there's a lot of guys that have played on the road, understand what it takes to win on the road, whether it was Mississippi State last year, Missouri at homecoming. There's a lot of guys that have played in that atmosphere. It just requires, a focus. It requires an understanding that you're in it every single play. An incredible sense of urgency, and I'm certain that they're aware of what is going to be necessary for them to be successful. I'm not dealing with a group of guys that will be surprised by what game day and South Carolina and all that will be about. And we'll prepare for it with crowd noise and things of that nature this week to get them ready. But it'll take a great effort, a team that's locked in and playing their best when their best is needed. Good. All right. Thank you.
Coach Brian Kelly, you can sense in his comments a very busy week, a lot of things to navigate leading into the SEC opener on Saturday morning against South Carolina. Mentioned hopefully getting plenty of rep for those guys have to fill in the space left by the unfortunate season-ending injury to Jacoby and Guillory, as well as getting a couple of Tigers maybe closer to 100% to see them in action coming up against the Gamecocks on Saturday. And on top of that, just moments ago, talked about navigating a possible hurricane threat here in South Louisiana, as well as those storms carrying over following the next couple of days into South Carolina with possible storms. So a busy week, but a big opportunity for the Tigers, as you could tell from the words from head coach Brian Kelly. We'll take our last break, come back, and wrap things up. The Brian Kelly press conference presented by Farm Bureau.
NIL is dominating the college sports scene, and LSU has positioned itself at the front of the pack. But to remain competitive and stay ahead of the rest, we need your support. Bayou Traditions is the official NIL collective of LSU Athletics. Join the tradition and become a member by signing up online at BayouTraditionsCollective.com. Members receive exclusive access to LSU student athletes that you can't get anywhere else. Help ensure LSU remains a leader in the NIL arena. Sign up today at BayouTraditionsCollective.com.
There was a time when a person's word was enough, a time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
He's got a seam. He's down the near side hash. Tiger fans, if you've ever wanted to listen to the LSU Sports Radio Network while watching your Fighting Tigers on TV, now you can, and it's easy to do. Just pause the TV. Use the LSU Sports mobile app to stream the audio on your smartphone or tablet. Connect to a smart speaker, then wait for the audio to catch up to the point your TV is paused. Push play, and you are all set. Watch the Tigers and listen with the LSU Sports Radio Network and the LSU Sports mobile app.
15, 10, 5, touchdown! Tigers! When are 3 letters more than 3 letters? When they represent 14 storied universities, generations of tradition and unbridled passion, stadiums and arenas swelled with diehard fans, more than 260 national titles, thousands of All-Americans, and hundreds of Olympians. And the one conference where every catch, shot, swing, and stride just means more.
Wrapping up this week's Brian Kelly press conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, with some final thoughts and programming notes. Here again is Chris Blair.
This coming Saturday morning, it'll be 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon Eastern from Columbia, South Carolina, as your Tigers take on the South Carolina Gamecocks in the SEC opener. Just a reminder, in case you missed it earlier, that the SEC and LSU announced that the LSU-UCLA start time here in Tiger Stadium coming up following a week from this coming Saturday on a 6-day hold as far as kickoff time. The options right now, either 2:30 Central or 3:15. So little window there to plan for the UCLA-LSU game coming up a week from this Saturday. We heard from Coach Kelly working with the media today. Your chance to hear from him direct. Coming up Thursday, the Brian Kelly Show, live from TJ Ribs. We'll get it started at 7 o'clock. Then bright and early on Saturday morning, Hunt Palmer, Marlon Favorite, Brandon Taylor, they'll set the table for us, begin our broadcast day at 9 a.m. with LSU Game Day, leading us up to kickoff inside Williams-Brice Stadium. Jacob Hester, Gordy Rush will join me. We'll have the call of the game of the Gamecocks and the Tigers. That'll wrap it up for this week. Thanks to Gordy Rush. Thanks to you. Hope you'll join us again next Monday for the Brian Kelly press conference.
This has been the Brian Kelly press conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For the very latest on the Tigers, follow LSU football on X, Facebook, Instagram, and anytime at lsusports.net. The LSU Sports Radio Network. Network, a division of LSU SP and Playfly Sports.